So welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers season is all but over. Barring a miracle, they will miss the playoffs. And honestly, even if a miracle happens, I'm not sure they'll do much of anything, even if they make it.
Yeah, the Rangers are the dog that's been getting extra food from the dinner table because the family knows we're going to have to take it to the vet soon. And it's going to the farm upstate. That's what we're telling the kids. The 2024-2025 New York Rangers are going to the farm upstate with all of the other dogs that lived good lives and were kind of annoying at times, would rip open the garbage bag one too many times and would shit on the floor and would take a piss in the hallway. But at the very least, you did have a little bit of fun. And the idea when you first got that dog, you first brought that puppy home, it was amazing. You came home and everyone was so happy. And then it was 3 a.m. and the dog was running in circles and wouldn't go to sleep. And no one in the house could sleep. And I think that's a perfect metaphor for how this season has gone because the idea was here. There was a good idea here on paper.
They
at
had
the start.
concepts of a plan.
They had concepts of a plan. This was a team that was 2 wins away from making the Stanley Cup final, predicated on a handful of elite players, top 5 at their respective positions in Panarin, Fox, and Shesterkin, that had as solid on paper a top 9 as there was in the entire NHL, coming off of a year in which they overachieved, but were within something that was feasible for what they had last year. Hell, you could have made an argument that before the season started, the roster was better on paper this year than it was last year.
Of course.
Because you were putting Riley Smith in the Blake Wheeler spot. You were putting Zach Jones in the Eric Gustafson spot. And on paper, those were upgrades. Those were improvements. And you subtracted Barclay Goodrow and you had a functional fourth line center in Sam Carrick in there. You were going to have a combination of Edstrom, Rempe, and Vesey on the fourth line, which had been a pretty good fourth line down the backstretch of the regular season, even with Goodrow in the middle. And everything really fell apart quickly. That's really what's so striking about this and what's weird to think about in hindsight. They came out of the gate really hot. They were playing Miller with Fox. And as soon as Trouba came back from being injured, they had to put Miller back with Trouba. They put Lindgren, who was coming back from injury as well, back with Fox. And that unwound everything because that change is where the season derailed. And some teams are capable of putting the toothpaste back in the tube or kind of snapping out of a funk. Very clearly, this team was not one of those groups. They were not going to be able to respond from a 5-15 spell. Frankly, there are very few teams in the entire sport that are capable of that. You know, Edmonton did that last year. They came out of the gate 3-13. That team has 2 of the 5 best players in the entire world on it, and they went on a nuclear heater that, frankly, maybe no other team could possibly do. And now we sit here with the consequences of the fact that the Rangers were unable to come out of that tailspin because they didn't even need to be like good. If they had gone 9-11 in that stretch as opposed to 5-15, they're in a playoff spot right now. But they weren't able to quell that spell when it was going on.
Well, a lot of this too is on the coaching staff for continuing to do the same exact things, hoping for like that's the definition of insanity, right? You're doing the same experiment, hoping for something else to happen. Like I think I forget which one of the reporters posted it, but earlier, was it today or yesterday? Power play 1 is the exact same. The power play has been 2 of like 45 of 45. Like, can we do something? And that is really the crux of the entire year, where things aren't working. The coaching staff doesn't do anything to change it. When the Rangers are down a goal, the same players go out on the ice, don't score, lose the game. Next game, they're down a goal. They pull their goaltender, minute on the clock. Same guys are out there on the ice, accomplish nothing, lose the game. Next game, it's the same process. The power play, miserable power play 1, haven't been able to do much of anything over the past month. And it's the same guys again on the ice doing nothing, and Peter Laviolette and the coaching staff are rewarding those players with more ice time. This is part of, and again, like, this isn't just on Laviolette or just on one player or whatever. This is a whole foundational crack in the wall that is only getting bigger as the days go by, and no one is fixing it. Everyone just is kind of ignoring the fact that it's there, and now that the entire wall is cracked from corner to corner and it's unsalvageable, now everyone's looking around like, oh, wait, there's a crack in the wall. Oh, we should have done something about that earlier. That's maybe we should have called somebody about that or like gotten a fix for it. Like this is where we are, and it goes back to what you said a second ago, where the Rangers were doing well defensively with Miller Fox and other pairings as Trouba was out and Lindgren was out, and they never went back to that. And again, like, just why? The question one is why. Two, we keep talking about this every week, but like, you bring in multiple new defensemen and Susie and and Borgen and these guys that haven't really fixed any of the issues. So why don't you try something new? Why are we like? It's almost as if the Rangers are 70-8 and they lost one game and everyone is clamoring for them to make, lineup changes. Like, no, dog, you're 6 points out of a playoff spot. You have 6 games left to go. Montreal has won 5 in a row. They actually want to be in the playoff spot. Meanwhile, you got shut out by the Devils when you had like 20 shots on goal, and the Devils were never really afraid of you in a game that you not only needed to win, but again, you were playing the Devils. If you're not going to get up for a division rival in a game that you absolutely needed to win in order to at least have any hope of staying alive, this was the game. And you laid an egg, and there was nothing.
There's been no urgency.
There's nothing there.
There's no urgency. For a month now, they have been in effectively playoff games for a month, and the consistency just isn't there. There isn't that air of desperation that good teams have when they have their backs up against the wall. And that is something that a team like the Rangers that has extensive playoff experience is supposed to be able to draw upon. When we're handicapping playoff series in second and third rounds and in cup finals, one of the deciding factors is generally which team has been here before. Who's been down 3-2 in a series and being able to win 2 straight games and pull it back from a game 5 all the way through? That is hard to do. Not a lot of teams have that foresight. We talk about how that if you want to eventually win a Stanley Cup, you need to make the playoffs over and over and over and over again, largely because you need those experiences to be able to draw upon when you are up against the wall and be able to not overreact, to not be able to get too low or to get too high, and to find that nice even keel that really allows you to find where you need to be. I say this all the time on any podcast I record on or any column I write. It took the Lightning 12 years to win a Stanley Cup after drafting Steven Stamkos. It took the Golden Knights 6 years after coming into existence. It took the Avalanche 10 years after drafting Nathan McKinnon. It took the Blackhawks 3 after drafting Patrick Kane. It took the Kings like 5 or 6 after drafting Kopitar. If you want to eventually win the Stanley Cup, you need to make the playoffs over and over and over again so you can weed out the parts of your roster that aren't good enough, that aren't on the level to where you need to be. So the players that do hang around have a level of institutional knowledge that allows them to draw upon experiences that were negative and find ways to respond to adversity. And this is a team that's played a ton of playoff games.
Oh, yeah.
2 conference finals appearances and a first round exit over the last 3 years. The Oilers have 9. The Panthers have 10. The Rangers are at 7. That is within shouting distance of the 2 most teams with the most playoff experience going into this year's upcoming playoffs. And the Rangers have entirely wilted, and they have shown they don't have the in-house leadership, whether you want to talk about coaching or the guys on the team. And I was talking about this with one of my friends at dinner on Saturday, and even he's kind of at the point where he asked me, how come no one's talking about Trocheck being the next captain anymore? And I think, again, this is one of the telltale signs is when my casual hockey fan friends ask me questions that we discussed, a month or 2 ago, because eventually that conversation trickles down to the more casual, less informed fan. And it's real straightforward. You saw the turnover in the Minnesota game where all Trocheck had to do, he crossed the red line. All he had to do was send it in. Instead, he pirouetted in a circle, got dispossessed. Minnesota went down and scored. The Rangers only won that game because Minnesota was even worse than them. That was a preseason game. Neither team played a lick of defense. Defensemen were turning pucks over 5 feet in front of the net, and goalies were, entirely unable to make plays because of how bad the defense was in that game. And you are sitting here, the Devils, the team that, we got eliminated by them in the first round. We hate them. They take the Rangers lunch a lot. I know last year was different. The Rangers smoked them last year. The Devils also had a significantly worse team last year than they do this year. And then the team 2 years ago, of course, beat the Rangers in the playoffs. But you are supposed to be able to get up for those games. And Shesterkin did what he could for the first 30-ish minutes of that game. But you don't get to complain about the goaltending in a game where you score 0 goals. That is one of the golden rules of hockey analysis. If you want to complain about the goaltending, you got to at least give me 1 goal. You got to get 1 so we can have a conversation about, if it's 2-1 versus 2-0, if it's 3-1 versus 3-0, how that changes the game state, how you're able to bounce back. They lost 3-0 to a team. Jacob Markstrom has an .875 save percentage since coming back from that knee injury. The Rangers couldn't get 1 past him, a guy who has a save percentage under .880 in the last month and change. It's at a certain point, you are what you are. The Rangers are the dog that needs to be taken upstate because there is nothing here. There is no quality of life. It is over.
And that's one of the biggest questions surrounding this team too, is a lot of the guys on this team that would be better off on a different roster have these long-term contracts. Yep. Trocheck has a big contract. Zibanejad has a big contract. Like JT Miller was playing he's playing well, but
and he's only one guy,
right? And again, you mentioned it. Like the Rangers brought in a point per game player, and it has changed nothing. They traded for JT Miller, a guy who's been a point-a-game player, who's been a positive force on this team, and that has changed nothing about the way this team has played. And he's got a long-term contract, but there's other contract issues as well. K'Andre Miller, what the hell are they going to do with him? I tweeted out on Saturday that I'm, not only am I out on Miller, but, at a certain point, you are what you are, because he has these flashes of brilliance where, he makes this sick play and then he scores a goal. It's like, oh, where is this K'Andre Miller more often? And then he makes the most ridiculous defensive errors in his own zone that lead to goals against. And at a certain point, I'm out on K'Andre Miller just because of these just boneheaded plays. How are you in your own end just essentially gifting the puck to the other team 10 feet in front of your goaltender game in and game out? If K'Andre Miller was 21 and these were issues that were happening, you can I would be the first person to convince you, he's just he needs more runway, he's going to get coached, this is going to be this is going to be fixed from his game. Dog, where is the improvement on the in the defensive end? Also, offensively, I'd like to see more consistency out of him as well. But defensively, where is the IQ? And I understand from K'Andre Miller's perspective that he became a defenseman very late into his career coming up into the NHL. That he became he was a forward for pretty much the entire time. I think he switched over, what was it, in college or right before college?
His first year of college, he was the first time he really played defenseman at a serious level.
He hasn't had the time to cook when he was 7, 8, 9, being a defenseman, getting yelled at by coaches to pick up, to be a defenseman. He hasn't had that. So I understand why there's some aspects of that he's missing. However, if you're going to continue to be a defenseman in the NHL, you have to either pick that up or just go back to being a forward. Because if you don't know what to do with the puck behind your own net most games, then that's one of the biggest red flags that I can see in a defenseman. If you need to create that outlet pass, Or if you're under pressure and you need to figure out a way to get the puck safely out of your own zone, and teams are attacking you specifically because they know you have a tough time doing that, either you have to change your approach, or maybe it's just time for Kendra Miller to become a forward again. Like it's kind of a wild thought, but if your defensive IQ isn't at the level where it needs to be at this point of your career, and you've spent most of your life as a forward, maybe it's time to at least try it out, see how it goes. I don't know.
So let me build off of that with two thoughts. Number one, it's especially frustrating because he has shown you the ability to be an effective NHL
Yeah,
defenseman for prolonged, extended stretches, and he's largely done it with a substandard defensive partner.
sure.
The majority of his NHL minutes thus far in his career have come alongside Jacob Trouba, who physically declined each season, each successive season that he was with the Rangers, and because of that, you start to bake in certain instincts, certain habits because you get so used to playing with one guy. I think we have been very, very precise in our conversations over the last 3+ seasons now on the show and discussing the Rangers' issues in transition as far as forwards coming back, making themselves available for that first pass to be able to break out cleanly as opposed to flying the zone early, and what that does to a defenseman when they don't have that first pass. And I think a lot of the conversation we're having right now about Keandre Miller, to some extent, can be extended to what could be said about Alexis Lafreniere, where when
Yep.
the game is coming to him and it's coming to him well, he looks really, really good. He's able to make really high level plays. The conference final last year was a really eye opening. Okay, this guy has high end instincts and he can take advantage of a game when it comes to him. And then you look at the inverse of that this year, where the entire team is mired in. It feels silly to say a season long problem is a confidence issue, but that's effectively what this is. None of these guys have any feel for what they need to be doing on a consistent basis, and it's why everything feels like pulling teeth. They can't execute a clean breakout pass because nobody has any confidence in what they need to be doing.
76 games into the season, by the way.
And that's telling you on multiple levels, people have failed. You talk about coaching staff, and one thing we're going to talk about, we're going to talk power play defense. We got a few other topics to get to, but when you are consistently putting guys in a position to fail or putting guys in a position where they haven't been successful, eventually that becomes a you problem as a coach. And I always go back to something that Bill Belichick said in one of the books about him. One of the interviewers would ask him, "Well, what do you say when guys don't work out? You know, you draft a guy relatively highly and he didn't work out for whatever reason." He says, "I didn't do my job well enough on multiple levels. First, I misidentified what made that player successful in the first place, and then number two, I wasn't able to find a way to make him successful, and that's a reflection on me." And Belichick always says there's no such thing as a bad professional football player because they were able to get to the NFL. They must be good at something, and it's incumbent upon a coach to find what that is, even if that's just being a special teams guy in football. In hockey's case, I think there's a world where you could probably get passable third pair minutes out of Will Borgen. I don't think any team that fancies itself a Stanley Cup contender would be playing Will Borgen in a top four role. I think you would say the same thing about Carson Soucy. I think Urho Vakanainen could be a fine seventh defenseman on a quality hockey team, but the Rangers are asking him to be their fifth or sixth defenseman. I think when you look at Zach Jones, somebody who has good defensive impacts, Zach Jones denies the blue line at the highest rate of any Rangers defenseman on the team for the 2024-2025 season, which would by default make him their best defensive transition defenseman, but he can't get in over Carson Soucy. He can't get in over Urho Vakanainen because the Rangers do not put him in a position to be successful. And you look at that consistently over the years where guys have been asked to do things they are not qualified to be doing. We can revisit the Artemi Panarin right wing memorial scholarship over the first 5 years of him as a Ranger, whether it was Colin Blackwell or Barclay Goodrow or Jimmy Vesey or Ryan Strome as the center. They never found a center capable of playing on Panarin's level. They got one really good year out of Trocheck, but that very clearly was an outlier. And I think that's what I get to as like the root cause of these problems. The Rangers like hockey players, and there's no problem with that. You can like guys and their skill sets. The problem is they don't put these guys with the skill sets they have in positions to be successful. Or when they do, they don't ride it enough. You have 300 minutes of data to tell you Adam Fox and K'Andre Miller are one of the best defensive pairs in hockey. We can't go back to that, though, because we need two defensemen to babysit whoever you want to put, whether
Right.
it's Soucy, Borgen, whatever. We need to babysit our two bad defensemen. So we would rather have two bad pairs as opposed to one good pair and one bad
Right.
pair.
And the question too is, why are you trading for players that you then have to babysit? That's the $1 million question. Why are you trading for Carson Soucy when you need to anchor somebody with him in order for Carson Soucy to be quote unquote effective? Why are you trading for Will Borgen and then giving him a lifetime extension to then anchor him with somebody just so he can be quote unquote effective? The whole point of trading for a defenseman is that they are good enough to be to carry the pair. That is why you give up assets to get a player, to upgrade the blue line, to upgrade from the position that you had before. If you're trading for a player, giving up assets to acquire them, only for you to turn around and be like, oh, I got to put this guy with him so that they can be a functional pair because otherwise this guy can't do it alone. Why are you trading for him? It's a very basic question, but for some reason, like this question either hasn't been asked or hasn't been asked enough
No, they have their head in the
among
sand.
the Rangers, GM staff, that it just begs the question of, okay, well, you traded a high, we keep talking about this. If you traded a high third round pick for Carson Soucy, the idea is that Carson Soucy not only is capable of leading a pair, but can also bring up a defenseman that otherwise isn't as good. It's a high third round pick. The Sharks pick is not a nothing asset. You traded a pretty sizable asset to acquire this player with the idea that this is not only a good player that will be an upgrade, but somebody that will actively make your blue line better. And Carson Soucy has been so miserably bad. You've had to healthy scratch him. You've had to babysit him. Like, what was the point of that trade if all of the things that are supposed to be there when you bring in a guy during a trade all falls apart? What is the point, and what is the end goal? And this is, talking about Soucy and Borgen and continuing to play Vakanainen over Zach Jones for reasons beyond my comprehension. Like, these are all problems of the system. Why, like, there's questionable decisions that aren't being questioned, and they continue to be happening, and they continue to lead to these same exact results. And now that we're here, 6 points out of a playoff spot with 6 games left to go, Montreal winning 5 in a row. They look like they've all but secured the last playoff spot. And the Rangers are caught, holding the bag on a lot of these guys. What was the point of the moves that you made if they not only had not changed anything about your team, if anything, like, they've showed the problems of the roster, and you continue to not change anything? Zach Jones should be playing. Why is power play one
Calvin
unit
DeHaan
not
should
changed?
be playing.
Like, why? Like, these Matt Rempe is playing for Brett Berard today. Like, okay, sure, whatever. That's like at this point, like, it's not going to change anything. But, like, what is the insistence on continuing to try to prove that 2 + 2 is 9 when it is clearly not 9? Why are we insisting on trying to put a square peg in a round hole when we all know that that is not where it goes?
The other part of that, actually, there's two things I want to say off of that before I start pulling up some numbers. Number one, at least we've dispelled the notion they play better when Rempe's in the lineup this year, because I know that people kept tweeting the record wins and losses after each game, wins versus losses with him in and out of the lineup. Yes, he draws a lot of penalties. He takes a lot of penalties. He takes the highest rate of penalties per 60 minutes of ice time of any player in the entire NHL, and he only plays 7 minutes a game. Yes, does that entice the referees to call more penalties overall in the game because they want to even out the ledger? Yes, it does. But when you only score on 3 of your last 51 power plays, it doesn't matter that you draw more penalties when he's in the lineup. So I think that conversation can get a pin put in it for now. The first thing I want to pull up is these are transition stats, and I'm going to be very brief in this because I know this is a little bit dense. This is a little bit too niche for some people, but here we go. This is just transition stats. So exits with possession, which are passes that are either carried out or those are pucks that are carried out of the defensive zone, or those are pucks that are passed out of the defensive zone. Clears per 60, those are the rim outs along the boards or the alley oops. A passed exit, very straightforward. A carried exit, very straightforward. RET to exit means a retrieval that leads to an exit. A failed exit is an attempt to exit the defensive zone that doesn't work. Entry denial is in the neutral zone when someone is skating at you. Do you prevent them from going past you? And then the carry rate, that is the percentage of the time the other team skates past you with the puck. There are 6 defensemen here. We're not going through all 6. The only 2 I want to highlight are Borgen and Vakanainen because those are such significant departures from last year's team. The numbers for Fox, Miller, Schneider are all relatively close to what they were last year. Lindgren, you'll note, they're all slightly lower to some degree. And the big thing here is for 2023-2024 for Will Borgen, these are Jacob Trouba's numbers from last season on the team that won the President's Trophy. You compare last year's Trouba, to which we all agreed was probably their worst or second worst defenseman on the team. He is exiting the defensive zone with possession less. He is clearing the puck less. He is passing the puck out of danger less. He is carrying the puck out slightly more. He is retrieving the puck less. He is failing to exit the zone at about the same rate. Will Borgen, when you look at the plot that this is plotted on, he is in the lowest bottom right corner. He gives up the blue line at the highest rate of any defenseman in the entire NHL for this season. He is as passive as it possibly gets. And that tells you 2 things. Teams are targeting him in the neutral zone. And number 2, it's telling you that by and large, they are avoiding where K'Andre Miller is. You'll notice he's got a slightly higher rate of carry-ins. And then the other part I wanted to talk about was Vakanainen, who, same deal, exiting the zone less overall time in the offensive zone. And those are the big departures here. The drop-off from, and then Vakanainen, the 23-24, those are Eric Gustafsson's numbers from last year, and Vakanainen's numbers are below for 24-25.
Eric Gustafsson going from a 60% entry denial to Vakanainen 7 is outrageous. Yeah. Outrageous.
And that tells you something about the state of the team in the neutral zone. And the neutral zone is the life's blood of a hockey team. If you can't get through consistently, you are going to have a hard time. You think about over the years, whether you want to talk about 2015, 17, 22, 23, or 24, when the Rangers have had the inability to get through the neutral zone consistently, and they haven't been able to get to offense as much per volume, that's when their offense is dried up, when they go from scoring 4 goals a game to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 1 to 0. And that's largely been the issue over the years. And this year, it has entirely fallen off a cliff. Their neutral zone play. And the thing about neutral zone play and defense, and we talked about this last week in terms of 3-on-3 overtime, neutral zone and defense are about effort. They are about awareness. They are about positioning. Are you putting in the effort to be where you need to be? That is the single most important component of good transition play. And we know the Rangers have effort issues. We know they aren't where they need to be more often than not, which makes the defensemen who are trying to break out of the zone's jobs more difficult than they need to be. And that has a trickle-down effect. If we can't get out of our own zone, we're in our own zone longer. If we're in our own zone longer, the other team is generating more offense. It's really straightforward when you think about it, and this matches up. When you watch the Rangers try and play, it looks like 18 skaters who have never played with each other before because no one is where they need to be.
And it's no one is where they need to be. Also, they don't support each other.
Nope.
Like there's even as simple as one breakout pass is sometimes too difficult for this team, and that is just like, dude, we're in April. I was gonna say March. No. We're in April. We are 76 games into the regular season. If simple outlet passes are a problem for your team is going nowhere. That is not. That shouldn't be a hot take. I'm not breaking any news here. Whether that be the Rangers, the Red Wings, the Blue, like whichever team, like it, I'm not picking on the Rangers. Like, you pick any of these teams that are in a playoff spot. It's just like every team has the same problem. If you can't complete a simple outlet pass, if you can't complete a 3-on-2 opportunity with a shot on goal without you trying to pass 19 different times, if you have massive issues defending your own zone and you continue to change nothing about it, yeah, you're going to not make the playoffs. Like, this is as simple as that. And at a certain point, it just comes down to, okay, well, if your forwards aren't supporting the defense, like one of the biggest, the two biggest forwards I can think of that have this problem are Trocheck and Lafreniere, where there is very little effort on the back check, very little effort to make that extra effort play on a lot of the games in this particular season. There's, the Rangers have had this problem for multiple coaches now, but like, dog, shoot the puck. Please shoot the damn puck. Oh my God. Stop trying to pass through 9 people for this perfect pass that is never going to go through because the other team, I don't know if you know this, Nick, but the other team has footage on the New York Rangers, and they know exactly what players' tendencies are. And every team in the league knows the Rangers are just going to try and pass the puck around 78 times in order to get this perfect cross-ice pass that is for sure going to go in the net when the pass connects, which, breaking news, will never connect because teams know exactly what you're trying to do. And the Rangers don't have a plan B. They don't for some reason they're afraid of shooting the puck. Like, just get it on net, see what happens. Like, it's such an infuriating thing that they keep trying this. We're gonna pass 70 times because, I don't want it. I don't want to make the mistake. Oh, but if my shot gets blocked and the other team goes the other way, it's my fault. I don't want to be at fault. I'll give it to my teammate, so it'll be their fault instead. It's a lot of that going on in the offensive end, and in the defensive end, they don't know what their assignment is. A lot of times, they look lost. They don't know. They're backing up way too much. They're giving the opponents so much ice to skate, to get into their perfect positions, and for them to create enough chaos to score easy goals on, whether that be Shesterkin, Quick, whoever it is. Could be me in net for all that matter. It doesn't matter. Like, the Rangers are giving up so much space in the defensive end, so much space in the neutral zone. No one's coming in to back check. In the offensive zone, there's way too much. No, you can have it. No, you can have it. No, you. No, I don't want to shoot it. You shoot it. And by the time someone actually wants to be in a position to shoot the puck, it gets blocked and it comes out of the zone. There's so much rigidity to this team, which you would expect in the preseason, you would expect in October, but to see it in April with 6 games to go in the regular season is, there's got to be a more, like, this is not DEFCON 5, like, this is not just a red flag. Like, DEFCON 6, like, could the red flag be any redder? Like, I don't even, like, what's a redder flag than red flag? Like, I can't even think of a name for this. Like, this is so catastrophically bad, and it tells a lot. Like, it tells you everything you have to know about the system in place for this team, where these are the problems game in and game out. And I'm not in the locker room in between periods, and I'm not, I'm not listening to what Laviolette says to the team behind closed doors. Whether that's Laviolette's thing, whether that's the players not listening, or maybe it's a combination of both, I don't know. So I don't want to single out one particular party here in the situation, but this is a failure of everybody all around. Forward's not back checking. Laviolette can't control. Like, he doesn't have a controller. He doesn't have a PS5 controller, and he's not playing EA NHL controlling all these guys, and he's not back checking. Like, Trocheck not back checking is Trocheck's fault. Lafreniere not skating and just kind of gliding out there is Lafreniere's fault. It's a lot. Some of it's Laviolette's fault for not changing anything and just sticking to his ways and saying a whole lot of nothing. But at the same time, it's up to everybody individually to show up and do their job. And right now, as we've said for pretty much the whole season, there's only been a handful of guys on this team that have actually shown up more
Will
times than they
Cooley and
haven't.
Sam Carrick, Igor, Fox for the most part.
Yeah.
That's really all I got. Anyone else? You haven't done a whole lot. Like, yeah,
Gabriel Perreault.
yeah,
He's been good. Yeah, Gabriel Perreault, let's go.
he's played, and the thing
He's been good he's been good. And it
he
still
looks the
hasn't
part.
done anything.
The game doesn't look fast for him, and that's really all you can ask for a guy who's learning on the fly as on the fly gets. The other big thing topic wise I wanted to talk about was the power play, because they're 3 for their last 51. 3 for your last 51 would
That's
get
good,
you
right?
3 for 51 would get you sent from the majors to single A. They would send you back down to play against kids who were barely out of high school and college if you went 3 for 51 playing professional baseball. It is almost unfathomable to watch a power play that over the last 3 years has been one of the 5 best in the entire NHL be this bad, but it's multifaceted. And the biggest drop off, if you look at an individual player by player on the power play, it's their net front stuff. Kreider's offensive depreciation because of his injuries, or if you want to say the aging process and you want to say the injuries are being used as an excuse, whatever, that's the biggest drop off. They are not getting nearly as much dangerous offense. And because of that, their shooting percentage has taken a noticeable dip. And the real way you tell, number one, they have one of the highest rates of scoring chances of any team in the entire NHL on the power play. They get the puck at the net a whole lot by volume. They're 10th in expected goals per 60 minutes on the power play. So if they're creating a reasonably high volume of offense and they're creating reasonably dangerous offense and the puck's still not going in, your next recourse is, well, what's different from this year versus last year? And when you look at the numbers, Kreider last year had 17 individual expected goals on the power play. Just Kreider alone was accounted for 17 expected goals on the power play last year. This year, 11, 6 less. He's on pace for 50 less individual scoring chances than last year and 33 less individual high danger chances than last year. Of course, we got to account for the fact he's missed quite a few games this year in those rate stats. But by and large, when you take away that net front play and you force the puck further away from the net from your scoring chances, of course you're going to have a less efficient power play. If you're taking lower quality shots more often than not, it's going to be harder for them to go in. Teams are better than ever at taking away shooting lanes and taking away passing lanes. It is harder than it has ever been in the NHL to turn a scoring chance into a shot on goal. And now that you don't have that net front jam play, that means we're settling for more Fox point shots. We're settling for more Zibanejad one-timers. We're settling for more Panarin from the opposite circle, or we're hoping that Trocheck can crash down. Or if JT Miller happens to be out there, we're hoping JT Miller can crash down. Because though he has an above average shot in terms of shooting percentage, I wouldn't classify JT Miller as an elite shooter. And that's really the issue the Rangers have on the power play this year. Their most consistent power play, the net front tip play or jam play, hasn't been there. And it's forced everybody to be more isolated and stationary. And when guys are waiting for pucks and having to stand around waiting for pucks on the power play, the defense can cue in on them and take away those lanes. And it forces you to settle for crappier shots. And that's why they're giving up more. They have given up more goals against on the power play than they've scored over the last
2 weeks. Yeah.
Over the last 51 power play attempts, they have conceded more goals than they have generated themselves. That tells you something is fundamentally broken beyond repair here. And the thing that
makes it even more shocking that nothing is changing.
I won't say that because they have rotated one or two guys in and out, but none of it has worked, which is, I think, the bigger point. And then the other part of that I think is crazy, the power play is supposed to be where your best players take advantage of the most favorable game state. We work so hard to go from defense to offense to setting up in the offensive zone. At the start of a power play, if you win the faceoff clean, you did all of the work already. And then because the other team only has 4 players, you get to take advantage of that. You manipulate the defense. You put them in conflict. You make them overlap and crisscross with each other so they blow an assignment. And then you generate a good scoring chance and you can move the puck around and you can get the goalie moving. These are all factors that can increase the quality of your offense on the offense in general. And then on the power play, which, and Jay Fresh tweets this once every few weeks, but you are 60% more likely to score a goal on the power play than you are at 5-on-5. If you can't take advantage of that, there is something wrong with your team. Period. There's no excuses. There's no, it's effort, it's bad luck. No. When we are talking specifically about the power play to this degree of badness, that's an execution issue. A bad team would have stumbled into 10 out of 50 power play goals. A bad team would be 15% on the power play. 3 out of 51 is unfathomably bad.
It's awful. And this just goes to show that like the sky is falling right now for this team. Everything this year that could possibly go wrong is going wrong, which is the inverse pretty much of what happened last year, where Sans Filipino, of course, missing most of the season. Pretty much everything that could have gone as well as it could have went about as well as it could have for the Rangers last season. Multiple career years. All of these. Oh, we're down 2 goals in the first 10 minutes. Okay, that's fine. We'll still win the game, and then they did every single time. The
Rangers don't have a 2-goal comeback this year, by the way.
No, they don't.
They don't have a multi-goal comeback all year. Continue. I'm sorry.
Right, and it's like, when we talked about this multiple times. When you are banking on the best case scenario happening again, this is one of the results that can happen. Is everything went well for you last year. Okay, cool. Well, now you're gonna flip that, and we'll see how you do now. Now that Trocheck isn't having a career year at age 31 or 32 or however old he is. Like Panarin's not. He's still has like 80 or 90 points, but he's not scoring 110, 100 whatever amount of points that he had last year. That he was one of the best forwards in the league, full stop. He's not having that this year. And that Kreider, who has been a net front demon the last few years, not only has fallen off a cliff, he's fallen into the abyss. He has 5 assists all year. They should have. I understand. This is one of the situations where I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in Chris Drury's office, because I really want to fundamentally understand the thought process behind not trading Chris Kreider. I would have to imagine that teams were calling about him. So my question is what is the loyalty on both ends worth what you are seeing out of him this season? Is it worth it? I understand. Okay, he's probably gonna have his number retired. In the rafters. He's been a Ranger his entire career, and I would have to imagine he wants to stay there. I get all that, but dude, Chris Kreider has objectively been bad. Objectively has been invisible. Hasn't created enough offense for a guy that supposedly is one of your 6 best forwards. This is the kind of production that you get, and you didn't trade him. And I understand that you'd be trading low, but anything would have been better than what you're getting out of him right now. And it all goes back to everybody was having a good year last year. Now nobody is having a good year this year. And everyone's just kind of hoping this goes away. And again, I hate to break it to you, Nick, but there's 6 games left in the season, and the Rangers are 6 points out of a playoff spot. Oh, and by the way, Jeff Gorton's Montreal Canadiens are 6 points ahead of the Rangers in the final spot in the wild card. Listen, I'm sure Jeff is somewhere with a beer in his hand right now. Even it's a Monday afternoon. I'm sure he's having a beer somewhere, just looking at the standings and the duck cigarette meme of just laughing. This is he's having a ball, because now ultimately for all of the things that were great about Jeff Gordon, for all the things that were bad about Jeff Gordon, whatever things we can get into the weeds about, at the end of the day, Jeff Gordon's looking around saying, "You see this? You see what the guy that succeeded me is doing. Oh, well, looks like I wasn't so bad, was I? And whether that is justified or not, he has all the right in the world to feel that way because his team is in a playoff spot, and the Rangers right now are spinning their wheels in the mud, trying to get out to compete in a race that they've already lost.
The one last thing on the Rangers before we pivot, because we are going to talk about Ovechkin breaking the goal scoring record. I
We
had
should we
someone.
should hit on the next head coach
Yes, that's where I
that's
was
stuff
going
as well.
next, because I had a subscriber DM me and ask, why are you and Andrew so opposed to them hiring Mark Messier, whether that's coach or general manager? And I think there's two parts to this conversation. Number one, the most straightforward, the most obvious, he doesn't have any experience. He has coached Team Canada in two minor international hockey tournaments 15 years ago. That is the entirety of the extent Mark Messier has in a coaching capacity. He has never been in an executive, a general manager, or a leadership type role with any hockey organization. Never been something with Team Canada the same way Gretzky was. Never been a coach the same way Gretzky was back in Arizona way back when. And that didn't work very well, as everyone famously knows. That's the first part of this. And if you want to make the argument, well, look at Marty St. Louis, look at JJ Redick, look at Steve Nash. Sure, you could convince me that somebody who was actively in and around the game, that wasn't that far removed from playing, that I think you could talk me into. You know, if you wanted to try and sell me on the Rangers hiring Joe Pavelski to be their next head coach 2 years from now, that you could at least give me
Sure.
the illusion of he's not that far removed from being a player. He knows what players in today's game need. Mark Messier hasn't been involved with the day-to-day of hockey in 21 seasons. That is a very different job than going on ESPN twice a week to do intermission reports. Mark Messier's in the loop. I'm sure he talks with people all the time in the hockey world. I'm sure he has friends in the Rangers organization. I'm sure he's probably talked to James Dolan in the last few months or the last year or so, just as a friendly, how are you doing? How is the team? That type of thing. The problem becomes without that experience to draw upon, and we see what Mark Messier values when he gives his analysis. He is very much of the old school tribe. He is very much a product of Glenn Sather hockey. He wants people like Matt Rempe in the lineup. He loves Jacob Trouba because he throws big hits. And while those are valuable components to a hockey team, they are not more valuable than goals. And that's the first part. The other half of this, and frankly, the easier way to explain this to people, how do you fire Mark Messier if it doesn't go well? That's the problem to me fundamentally. It's why anytime people talk about, well, how come the Yankees don't get Derek Jeter more involved? How do you fire Derek Jeter if he's bad at being a general manager or a manager? Hell, the Yankees won't even fire Aaron Boone, and he's not even a legend. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to for me. If it doesn't go well, you are going to give him an extra year or two because you don't want to embarrass him. Look what's going on in Detroit right now with Steve Yzerman. Do you really want that to be your reality of, well, come on, it's Steve Yzerman. He'll figure it out. Give him one more year. He's going to figure it out. And at a certain point, they don't figure it out. And you've just wasted all of that time giving someone extra benefit of the doubt because of their playing career as opposed to their executive or their coaching experience.
I say this to the interns that work at Sirius and that I train or new hires. Show me, don't tell me. Don't tell me that you want to be the if you're Mark Messier, don't tell me that you want to be the head coach of the Rangers. Show me that you are putting the work in. Are you coaching anywhere? What is your coaching system? What are you going to deploy? What is your philosophy? Show me that you can coach, and then we can have somewhere. And then we can
it
have
doesn't
a
even need to be the
conversation.
NHL.
Right.
Patrick Waugh was in the queue for,
Yeah.
He was there before he was in Colorado.
Show me you can
He
do
got
it.
fired and went back.
Right. And there are, like you said, there are very specific examples of former players immediately becoming coaches. But again, like you listen to JJ Redick before he became the head coach and now after he became the head coach, my man's is in the depths of basketball analysis all day, every day, studying and watching film. He said it himself. He's a psychopath when it comes to basketball. He is like so all in that he's like, there was a story about him watching film at a car wash. Like Mark Messier is not doing that, right? So this is what people have to understand. when there are outliers to the to the system like a JJ Redick, this man not only just finished playing, he's a complete psycho about every aspect of the sport and how to play it at a high level. That's why not only is he the head coach of the Lakers, they are probably exceeding expectations with him as head coach because he has understood how to make his roster gel as well as they possibly can. With Mark Messier, he hasn't shown me that he wants to be a head coach. He hasn't done anything in 20 since he retired in 04, he hasn't coached in any capacity, hasn't been around any team in any capacity since that time. And all these guys, like all the fans that want Mark Messier are the same people that want Merempe on the ice at all times. The Venn diagram is a circle because those and I don't want to say like, oh, those fans don't know anything and I know so much more. Like that's not what the point is. But if you want to hire Mark Messier as a head coach of the team, you have to then write me a very detailed essay explaining why. Not just he's Mark Messier. You have to convince me that Mark Messier could be not only a good head coach, a better head coach than Peter Laviolette or insert other name here that is getting thrown around like Tortorella or something like that. I don't even know.
Tortorella, like, Rick Tocchet, whoever you want to put in here.
Whomstever, if I may quote you for a second, whomstever is the name that you want to put out there. You have to convince me that Mark Messier would be a better tactician than those guys. Because otherwise, you're hiring a cheerleader. Mark Messier is not going to get hired to be the head coach of a team, especially of the New York Rangers, to be a cheerleader. You have to understand what the role of a head coach is. And if Mark Messier cannot prove to me or to anybody in the NHL or in the minors for all that matters, because he hasn't coached there either, if he can't prove to anybody that is hiring a coach that he is a capable tactician that is worthy of being a head coach in the National Hockey League, then why are we hiring him? Why are we pushing to hire him? It's whether it's Mark Messier, the guy down the street, whatever, they all have the same amount of head coaching experience. Like I had coached roller hockey for a year, college roller hockey. I have more coaching experience than Mark Messier, dog. Like, what are we doing here?
And really, and the last point on this before we move on and we talk about Ovechkin, the other component to this, and we talked about this a few years ago when we were talking about Dave Hackstall or Chris Knobloch as potentially the Rangers head coach. Why would you want this to be your first job? The margin for error here is about that big, if that. It's maybe that big. Because if Chris Drury gets to hire the next coach, which we are both of the opinion that Chris Drury should not get to pick a third head coach in 5 years, but assuming he does, how are you possibly going to be successful as a first-time NHL head coach walking into a team where the expectation is they need to be Stanley Cup good with this defense, with this group of veteran forwards, minimal cap space, and no real room for improvement other than guys like Cooley, Berard, Othman, and Perreault getting better, which sure they will, but that's not enough to make up the gap of where the Rangers are right now to where they want to go. That means they need to overhaul this roster. And you're going to tell me Mark Messier is going to be coaching restricted free agents they bring in change of scenery trades? Like, is there a part of me that's sick in the head and is laughing at the thought of Mark Messier coaching Trevor Zegras? Yeah, it would be very funny in all honesty. John Tortorella coaching Trevor Zegras would be very funny. But
it'd be funny for like a week and then just get really sad.
Oh, it'd be miserable. After a week, the novelty would wear off. I mean, for every single person out there who's doing the well, Tortorella, if the team was bad, he'd be yelling at them. I mean, if you just want to waste
that worked out really well in Philadelphia, by the way.
If you want to waste another year of the primes of Panarin, Shesterkin, and Fox with John Tortorella yelling at them for not backchecking, I guess. What the difference between Laviolette this year and Tortorella this year? Maybe 3-4 more wins. Maybe you squeak in as the last team. I'm not entirely convinced. Let me take a step back. I don't think Laviolette is the reason the team has entirely fallen off a cliff. I don't think he is helping in any discernible way. And you could make the argument, a strong argument at that, that over the last month he has hurt the team. I don't think the difference between someone of Laviolette's caliber and Tortorella or Jay Woodcroft or Rick Tocchet, I don't think the difference in that group, we always talk about there's only like 6 or 7 good coaches in the NHL. Once
I'm
you
not
get,
the biggest opponent of Jay Woodcroft, by the way. I
I'm
think
not an opponent to
I
it.
kind of think he got kind of screwed by awful goaltending, and obviously he has his faults, and I'm not here to wave my pom poms at Jay Woodcroft exactly, but given the current pool of available head coaches, he might be the best one.
And that, again, that's not saying a lot. That's not saying a whole lot. There is not a great pool of guys out there. Like if Burnett gets fired in Nashville, maybe. If Mike Sullivan gets fired in Pittsburgh, sure. But like you're banking on other teams firing guys. And then again, that raises the question, well, if they couldn't figure it out there, why are they going to figure it out here? And that's the problem with retreads. And like if you're David Carl, why would you take this job? You have your pick of the litter of any job in the NHL that becomes open over the next handful of seasons. Why would you walk into the most difficult job imaginable in a market that the market's not tough, but the expectations are going to be very high and you don't have a lot of room to squeeze more out of the existing group? And that's really the issue.
You can spin zone yourself into thinking like David Carl would want the Rangers job because if he succeeds here, then it would kind of cement him as one of the best coaches in the sport. Like, will this happen? I would doubt it. And, I don't even know if he leaves college hockey right now, but let's just say he does, and the Rangers essentially give him a blank check to come here. There's a world in which you can convince me that he would want a difficult position to kind of prove his winning track record of, I don't want to go into an easy situation. I like the Rangers seem unsolvable, but if I solve it, then my legacy is cemented forever. There's a world in which you can, spin zone yourself into thinking that like that's the logic that he can use. Will this happen? I'm not David Carl and I don't have his number, so I can't ask him. But, I wouldn't put money on it, that's for sure. But I think that the chances of it happening are higher than zero, if not, still in the relatively single digits of that happening. But it's not zero, and I can see him doing that because, he's done a lot of winning, but he hasn't coached the NHL. So I can see a world in which he says, okay, people don't think I could coach in the NHL, even though I've won everywhere else. All right, give me the Rangers job, and we'll go from there. Like, I can see that. Will that happen again? Probably not, but guy can dream.
And the last thing to touch on before we get out of here, Ovi broke the goal scoring record in very cool fashion. I think that trade-off worked very well for both parties. The Islanders got a win they massively needed, even though they had to stand there and wait for 30 minutes. Ovechkin got the goal-scoring record. Ovechkin is very likely still drunk as the moment of this recording is going on, and it's a cool moment. Yeah. You don't get things like that all of the time. That more likely than not, if we ever see anyone break any of those big milestone records again, it's probably this one, because the points is never happening. The wins, Brodeur, never happening. Because you have to be like the best in the world for 20 something seasons, like Ovechkin's been. Like if you go and look, Ovechkin's career average for a season is 41 goals. There are a lot of guys who play professional hockey. They score 41 goals one time.
I need to highlight this comment. Mark Messier with an assist from Neil Smith is the only reason this franchise has even won Stanley Cup in the last 85 years. He wants to coach. He deserves a chance to do so. From Jailbreak 7601. And to you, Jailbreak 7601, I expect a large message out of you explaining in detail the kinds of things that Mark Messier wants to do with this team tactician-wise. Like I said about 10 minutes ago, if Mark Messier wants to coach, okay, show me that he wants to coach. What does that mean? He wants to coach. So do I. I
would like a date with Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah, like I want to win the lottery. Okay, that's great. But like, if you want to be a head coach of a National Hockey League team, dog, you got to show me that you are capable of doing that.
You got to do something other than argue with PK Subban once a week on TV.
I don't like he hasn't.
job. That's not a hockey job.
Yeah, it's everybody wants things. That's the key here. Is everybody wants things, but if you don't show people that you actually want to go do something, then you just yapping about it isn't going to get you the job. I'm so like that's if Mark Messier wants to coach, okay, cool. Have him go to juniors like Patrick Waugh did, win, and then we can figure it out if he wants. By the way, he's been pining for this job for like a decade now. He's had a decade to go and show me that he can do it. And Jailbreak is I responded saying, and he doesn't have to run it by some podcast guy. You think he doesn't know hockey? Which again, like you're missing the whole point of the argument.
It's not that he doesn't know hockey. It's that knowing something and being able to explain something are two different skill sets.
Exactly.
There's a reason some professors are brilliant. Doesn't mean they're good teachers. Doesn't mean they can articulate ideas. And yes, Mark Messier, of course, knows hockey. Does he know the NHL in 2024, 2025? That's a different conversation. Does what worked 30 years ago still work in the present? Glenn Sather tried for 15 years to run a 1990s Oilers-esque team in New York, and it didn't work out particularly well. If you go and read Mark Messier's Wikipedia page and you scroll down and it says, in 2007, Mark Messier expressed interest in the Rangers general manager job. The current holder of that position, Glenn Sather, said he had no plan of stepping down anytime soon. Mark Messier's name was attached to be an assistant general manager, which Messier expressed no interest in taking. If you're not willing to work for it, you don't deserve to have the job. I mean, that's the most straightforward. That was almost 20 years ago. Mark Messier, if he really wanted to do this, had 20 years to go buy a junior hockey team like Patrick Waugh did and develop yourself as a coach, as a decision maker.
How was Wayne Gretzky as coach of the Coyotes, by the way? Well, he won a lot of games, right? He was a really good tactician, right? Surely.
It's one of those things where, of course, you have sentiment. Everybody has sentiment. Everyone has appreciation. Everyone has reverence for what Mark Messier did as a hockey player for the Rangers. That's not in question here. The question is, how does that as a player translate to being a decision maker? And when you listen to someone like Mark Messier or someone like Wayne Gretzky talk, they go back to their experiences. The average hockey player cannot relate to Mark Messier's experiences because they're not one of the 20 best hockey players of all time. Andrew, at this point, it's over.
He'd like to see what Messier can do.
Let him coach the Wolfpack. If he wants to figure it out, let him be an assistant coach.
I also would like to see what Messier can do. So have him go coach a junior team or the Hartford Wolfpack or somebody. Have him coach somewhere. And then I would like to see what he can do, and then we'll go from there.
Marty St. Louis was at least coaching like 12-year-olds before they gave him the Canadiens job. Like, when was the last time Mark Messier was coaching anyone? If it was 15 years ago for that Spengler Cup or Deutschland Cup for Canada, which is not a major tournament, mind you, I think he might need to brush up on some things. Like, I don't know if Mark Messier has a dry erase board and tactics ready to go right now.
He still has the marker like dried up from the dry erase board that he can't clean up now. It's like stuck to the cardboard.
Stick to TV. TV's a better gig. Like, realistically, TV is a better job. Get your 6 figures, go to a studio twice a week, argue with PK Subban, don't have to do any actual work, because again, it's not going to be an easy job. God help whoever takes this job.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. But also, getting back to Ovechkin for a second, like, I think it was really funny that they just stopped the whole game for like half an hour to do the ceremony.
There's no, we talked about this with Sam. There's no good way to do these things because this is hockey and like it's played on ice and you got to resurface it. You got to roll out a carpet. You got to do all the bells and whistles. It's not like football. It's not like basketball where they just walked Kareem from courtside to center court. They took a picture, they gave a speech, and that was it. You know, you got to stop the game. You got to get all of the people up from the press box level down to the ice level. You got to roll out the carpets. You got to set up the sound systems. You got to pass out the hats. You got to do all the bells and whistles. And like, don't get me wrong, cool moment, very silly. Very silly that the Islanders have to stand there and watch that happen on the ice. It's silly. There's no good way to do it. We've established this, but cool moment. You know, that's something you'll remember forever. And it's one of those things that really makes you take a step back and think like, Ovechkin's been the best in the world for 20 years. And it took being the best in the world at something for 20 years to get here. There are a lot of us who we have bad days at work. A bad season at work for Ovechkin's 31 goals. There are a lot of guys who have played professional hockey who hit 31 goals one time, and that's it. That's wow. Can you
Right.
remember that? I scored 31 goals in the National. There's someone like Andrew Mangiapane who's a good hockey player.
Sure.
His career high in goals, he's probably never sniffing 30 goals again for what he is now. There are a lot of guys who would like to have 1 year as good as Ovechkin's had over the last 20. And it's good Nick Backstrom was able to be there. It sucks he wasn't able to be an active participant in this, that his
Sure.
hip just hasn't been able to recover.
Hmm.
But a cool moment, one of the great players of all time, not just of his era. Him and Sid deserve a lot of credit for getting the NHL out of the abyss it was in, coming out of that 04-05 lockout. And it's really awesome. They're both still really high-level hockey players 20 years later.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really cool moment. Like, and everybody got what they wanted,
Yeah.
right? The Capitals, sure, they wanted to win the game, but all that, like, the number one agenda for the Capitals was to get Ovi the goal,
Yes.
and they accomplished that. And for everybody in the stands that paid like $1,000 to go see this game, they got what they paid for. They got to see Ovi's goal, in person. And the Islanders got and the Islanders fans in attendance and also the Islanders players on the ice, they got what they wanted. The Islanders won the game. Everybody went home happy. Like that's the best case with these situations. Like the Capitals, yeah, they want to win the game. Of course they did. Like this is the sport, but also they're not really playing for a whole lot right now. Besides maybe the President's Trophy at this point, but I don't know how much that like means to them, or how much that meant to them specifically yesterday when it comes to Ovechkin's, record. Do they want to win the game? Do they want to win the President's Trophy? Sure. But yesterday specifically, their goal, less so about the win and feeding Ovechkin as much as we humanly possibly can. Get him the goal, get him the celebration, and then we can kind of move on and recalibrate, think about winning games again. Like, it's a very cool moment. And to be, watching that game and I wasn't there for that, but just watching it in real time as it was going on, you just have such a really big appreciation for how this all happened. Like when Messier had not Messier, see, all this Messier talk has now encroached my mind. Like when Gretzky had 894, you looked around and you thought to yourself, there's no way.
No.
There's no way this is getting beaten. And now, not only is Ovechkin at 895, I would have to imagine he's going to get 900. And now the question is, could he get to 1,000? I don't think it.
He would need to play at least 4 or 5
Yeah.
more years.
I don't think that'll. I don't think that'll happen. But like the fact that we have now ended the 894 question, and now we're on to 1,000 is bonkers. And that is something that I never thought Gretzky's goal record was going to get broken. I don't.
Ovechkin himself told in that interview with Elliot Friedman 10 years ago was no chance. It's impossible.
No chance. Right. Exactly. So I can't see somebody coming in and beating Ovechkin's record, but records are meant to be broken. So
Austin Matthews has been the best goal scorer in the league for 10 years. He's not even halfway there. He would need to have the same career he's had for another 10 years and then another 5 years if Austin Matthews wanted to do this. And Austin Matthews is a very good hockey player. And then there's nobody else that's even remotely close as far as pace. The one last thing on this. If there weren't 2 lockouts in a pandemic, he would have had this 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
That's the last thing I wanted to get in on that. That just, again, that's how good this guy is. That he lost an entire season in 04-05. He lost half a season in 12-13. They lost 13 games in 2019-2020, and they lost 26 games in 2021. He very well could have had this record 2 or 3 years ago, at the least 2 or 3 years ago. And again, this is a guy who's 37 years old, 36 years old, and still one of the best goal scorers in the entire NHL. And it's a real testament, man. And some of it you would say is God-given because you look at the way Ovechkin's built.
39.
39, yeah.
Yes.
You look at the way Ovechkin's built, and you can tell he's not exactly hitting the sit-ups. He's not exactly hitting the crunches. And it doesn't really matter.
He's eating Cheetos.
He's eating Cheetos.
Hot Cheetos, by the way, which are the best Cheetos, but continue.
That you are correct in that. They are the best Cheetos. This is a guy who has consistently been one of the best players in the world for the last 20 years. And done it largely on just raw athletic ability. Because imagine how good Ovechkin would be if he was in shape. Like, are we talking like a 70 goal every year guy as opposed to 40? Like, it's crazy to think about. And I think on that note, that'll do it. I mean, what a moment for the NHL. Really awesome. And hopefully we can sustain this momentum over the next 2 weeks of casual hockey fan excitedness going into the playoffs. I'm very excited to get to the nitty gritty of arguing about the Leafs playing the Senators in the first round, arguing about the Blues playing like the Avalanche. There's a whole lot to get to.
It's going to be fun.
Even if the Rangers are going to the farm upstate. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Liberty Blue. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Andrew and I will talk to you guys real soon.
Later.